I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. We are changing the world one woman at a time. We're changing families, communities, neighborhoods, countries, one woman at a time. And I get the honor of introducing to you extraordinary women that are inspiring to me and that are change makers on this planet. So today I get to introduce you to Stephanie Weaver. Now, let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a TED-style speaking coach, writer, recipe developer based in San Diego, California. She has coached over 150 speakers in the TED style, working with clients worldwide, including me. She was my coach for my TED Talk, of which I am eternally grateful. Stephanie is the host of The Blue and Yellow Kitchen, a show on Facebook Watch and IGTV, where she interviews an author and makes a dish inspired by or related to their book. She's also the author of 3 books, including The Migraine Relief Plan, and is currently finishing up the Migraine Relief Plan cookbook. For that project, she's interviewing a variety of people on the topic of resilience. Her Resilience series just launched and can be found on her Instagram and her Facebook page. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy you're here. I mean, I told her this privately, but I'm going to say this for the world to hear. She saved me. She made me get on that stage feeling confident and clear because she was so loving and yet so powerfully strong in her direction. So I want to know, I mean, how you got here. I mean, because you clearly weren't born to be a TEDx speaker. That wasn't what was happening in your childhood. So what was happening in your childhood and how did you get led to do the incredible work that you're doing today?
So I think I've always been interested in storytelling. And when I was young, I had dreams of being a writer, and I actually still have old manuscripts, typewriter manuscripts from when I was trying to write stories and novels in my late teens. But I experienced trauma as a child and did not believe that I had anything of value to say. So I ended up being a technical writer in the museum field for 30 years. So writing for other people, not about myself at all. And then I feel like I found my voice and awakened when I was 49. That year, I started a food blog as a fun side hobby. And I also attended my first TEDx event, which was TEDx San Diego. And I was so captivated by the experience and the people that I met that I said, I want in. How can I help? How can I be part of this? And so I joined their program team and was thrown into the deep end and started coaching. I was a speaker myself in the museum field, but I had no training in how to coach people. But they needed people to coach people. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure I can do this. And then it turned out that the process that I learned in museum exhibition development of creating a big idea and then determining the story that we were going to tell our visitors was almost exactly the same process that one uses for TEDx or TED style talks. So I did that as a volunteer for 5 years. And then in the middle of that process, ended up people started asking me, well, how much do you charge? And I thought, oh, I could do this. You mean I could pay, people would pay me to do this? Because I was doing it to serve my community. And so one of the things that I wanted to share was, I think believing in my voice took a really long time. But once I did, I really feel like my life kind of started when I turned 49 or 50. So those of you who are listening, if you still haven't quite figured it out, it's never too late. And it has been a really amazing experience for me to meet people from literally all over the world, generally really focused, interesting people who are doing special things. Like your story was so incredible and felt like such an honor to help you craft it. And also the food piece of it was something that I'd always been interested in. And I didn't really know how to blog, and my husband set one up for me. And then that has developed into a whole another second career. So I finally really found my voice, but not until I was much older.
Well, well, first of all, that's incredible. There is no time limit on awakening. Ladies, I just want to say that. And second of all, you and I and many other people who've had challenging childhood, it takes a while to do that route, that journey to back to self, back to your own growth and your understanding. I want to talk just a little bit about resilience because I know you're doing that series, and I think that resilience is something that most of us don't think about. And so, talk to me about resilience.
Sure. Well, I have two, well, maybe three chronic illnesses, and they're invisible illnesses. So people don't know that I have something that I'm dealing with unless I tell them. I have migraine disease. I have fibromyalgia. I currently have a little spot of thyroid cancer that I'm going to have removed soon.
Oh,
And so, the resilience series is in support of this cookbook, which is the goal of it is for people who have chronic illness. It's anti-inflammatory recipes, and then I got the idea that it'd be nice to have some information in the front about how do you live well with a chronic condition. And we're all in bodies that are aging every day, and now we're all, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and people who end up with COVID may end up with longer term issues. Some people get better right away. So I wanted, and this last year, I think, has really been a test of resilience, right? It's been such a difficult time to not give in to fear, but also to really be careful and be careful about other people. And so the idea was to have these conversations, and then the front section will be called Recipes for Resilience. So it'll be quotes that'll be pulled from the different interviews. And because they've kind of fallen into different categories like, forgiveness and acceptance and, certain qualities. And so when I start, and I'm going to have to, kind of summarize these things at some point. So the things that are coming up for me are kind of flexibility and the ability to pivot. And I think last year was a really good example for myself. When your whole business is focused on live events, and all the live events all over the world get canceled in the same week, essentially, you have to come up with something else to make money. And so within about a week, I said, we need to put up a page on my website for virtual conferences and virtual coaching. And then that started generating people finding me and recognizing that, oh, maybe they still did need a coach, even if they were just sitting at their computer and doing Zoom, which everybody got very used to during the month of March last year. So, but I think that especially for women, I think women are very flexible in general, and we tend to multitask. But I think building the ability to pivot in the expectation that life change is going to happen, that change is not an unusual thing, change is norm, as opposed to us sort of feeling like, well, when I reach that place, I will be there and everything will be great. And I think what I've certainly learned is that it's really about being able to change and grow and move. And the other thing for me that's been especially helpful, I think, is the notion of lifelong learning, which is certainly something we talk about in museums. But for myself, for me, it's been around technology. I have constantly pushed myself as a baby boomer to keep up, and not just keep up, but really adopt new technology, learn things. My husband gave me a t-shirt a few years ago that says, I am the IT guy. Um, because it's not about me throwing up my hands and going, honey, can you come fix my computer? It's me saying, let me Google that, because generally he's just going to Google it anyways. So really, like, trusting that I have the skills to do these things, to learn a new technology, to figure out how to code my website, to figure out how to record a series, and find somebody on YouTube who shows you how to edit an iMovie so you can do these things. I mean, all those resources are all out there, but it's us feeling like we have the capacity to do it. And that's one of the definitions of resilience that's coming up for me.
Yeah, I think the belief in self and that we have the capacity to do things is really important. I really feel like there's an emergence of women happening on the planet. I talk about it a lot, and one of the challenges I think that women face is self-esteem and self-assuredness. And so what else do you think is challenging women at this time on the planet?
So, one of the things that happens when you've experienced trauma, so I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and part of that is learned helplessness. Some people are, experience domestic violence. Some people experience, assault, or just, sort of being talked down to and told they're not worth anything. And so that you have to actively work to overcome. You have to actively start to hear the self-talk. This is something you and I talked about. Recognize when it's happening and then create other scripts, other things that you can say to yourself that contradict that. And I think for women around the world, my word for 2021 is hope. Last year was really challenging, and I think I was challenged in my trust and belief in other humans. Honestly, I saw so much selfishness. I saw so many people acting out of their own interests and not in the interest of the greater good. And so I am focusing on the word hope this year because I really do want to believe that there are more good people than bad people, and that we can move forward, as a species and also as a country. So I'm really hoping that that focus for me just sort of reminds me to kind of use that as a touchstone.
I love that. I love that. I think um, that that hope really is about harnessing and opening to the possibility of the energy shifting and moving us to new different and different places. So I love that you did the migraine relief plan because there are a lot of people I coach, and some of them have issues with migraines, and you know I realize, this isn't a series where you can give a bunch of tips on how to heal your migraines, but really, what would you tell people that are suffering from migraines that debilitate them?
So, I was diagnosed at age 53, which is very late to be diagnosed because my pattern didn't follow the typical pattern. I did not have aura. I was not, down for 4 days in a dark room. I had what I thought were weather headaches. And it wasn't until kind of fairly a bit into menopause that I started having vertigo attacks, that I was finally diagnosed. And I had no idea that there were all these other symptoms, vertigo being one of them. So the first thing is it's 1 in 5 women experience migraine disease. Many people, more than half, are not diagnosed. So if you have sinus headaches, 90% of sinus headaches are undiagnosed migraines. If you have they're generally left a single side on the head. And if you move your head around, they get worse. Whereas a regular headache, if you move your head, it doesn't get worse. So there's definitely some things that people can kind of look at and say, yeah, I think I need to go find a headache specialist or a neurologist, because most family practice and internal medicine folks don't really know enough about migraine. They're not educated quite enough. So that's partly why people don't get diagnosed. There's a lot of lifestyle factors that contribute to triggering attacks. So you have this underlying, it's a genetic neurobiological disease or illness that really is, there's no cure for it, but there's a lot of things we can do. And the agency is what I'm kind of focused on, is learning is my unique pattern and then modifying what I can. So I can modify things that I eat. I can eat an anti-inflammatory diet. I can make sure I get a lot of gentle, regular movement, do meditation. All of these things help reduce the amount of inflammation and stress in the body, and that helps reduce potentially the number of attacks people have. I do take medication when I need it, so that's not something I'm against. But part of it is I just had no idea any of these things were the case. Like, I'd heard about cheese and red wine and maybe chocolate, but I had no idea that for me, it's fermented food. So I've never been able to drink alcohol, but I never made the connection that that was an actual trigger for me. I used to make my own kombucha and sauerkraut and yogurt and all these really healthy foods. I can't eat any of those foods without potentially triggering migraine. So it's for me, it was like learning what my pattern is. And that's what the plan does. It's an 8-week structured plan to help you figure out what your particular pattern is, the things that you can modify. Like I also have a weather issues. I can't change the weather, but at least now I'm aware that this particular weather pattern is a problem for me, and therefore I can modify other things to try to reduce the severity of an attack if we have this weather pattern, which we have today. Um, and so it's really a process of sort of learning to listen to your body, and that's something that I've always felt was really important. It's important for really all autoimmune illnesses. And I know you and I talked about you were not well and you saw that that was the case in a lot of your family members and you wanted to make changes. So it's all those things that we all sort of know about, like, eating healthy, quote unquote, whatever that is, but also, really putting the time into care for ourselves. And so self-care is something I'm talking about in the Resilience series with people as well. And I'm hearing all these great tips and different things. Like somebody today said she goes for walks with a friend where they're not together, but they're on the phone. So they're each walking, but they're talking. And so that's a pandemic adjustment, right? She'd rather be in person with a friend, but at least you're able to do that. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is help people kind of create these resources and understand their own bodies and their own patterns, and really listen to themselves, and then understand, that when they should have medication or when they do need to go to a doctor, of course, that's really important as well.
Yeah, well, I love that. I mean, and I think learning the language of the body and listening to the body is essential. And, like you, it took me a while to get it, but it's so important. There are some fermented things that I can't do either, and I don't get migraines, but my body does not like it. So it's like learning what your body likes and giving it that. So before I ask you my last questions, I always ask, the guests, tell us how to find you, especially people, if you are booked to do a TED Talk, this is the woman. Run, do not walk.
Well, thank you so much. So, stephanieweaver.com. So, STEPHANIE Weaver.com is my main website. And there's links to my speaker coaching website there, as well as my books and my recipe website. And all of those things, you can find me there. And then on social media, I'm S Weaver MPH, like miles per hour, but it stands for Masters of Public Health. So that's the best way. If you go to stephanieweaver.com, you can find all my handles and everything there and learn more about me.
Awesome. So I asked the same last question of every guest, and here it is. What do you think is important for women to know about awakening?
Trust your voice. We all have intuition, and maybe we've learned to disregard it, or that it wasn't important, or we didn't trust ourselves. But you actually do have that knowledge inside of you, and it's learning to listen to that then starts to unlock all the potential that you have in you.
Awesome. Well, Stephanie, I'm so grateful to know you. I'm so grateful to walk this path with you. I'm inspired by who you are and what you do, and eternally grateful for the gifts that you've given me. And so I know that you will continue to be successful.
Thank you so much for having me, Cynthia.
So, ladies, we post every week. You get to meet amazing women, and I what I hope is that you will take their gifts, their knowledge, and their wisdom and use it for your highest and best. Please come back as often. Share this with as often as you can. Share this with your friends and family, and I will see you soon. And remember to stay awake, because you are incredible.